Hey, everybody, welcome to Friday News Lunch on the Bucks County Beacon. Oh, got a frog in my throat. Here we go. Hey, I'm Kevin Mahoney, and each week we serve up the week's top stories affecting our communities and the nation. This week, it's time for another Power Lunch. That's right. I'll be joined by Emily Smith, owner and publisher of the Beacon. There she is. Not only will we be serving up this week's top stories affecting our community and the nation, we'll also take a peek behind the scenes at the Beacon and see what's coming up. We'll hope you join us live every Friday at noon on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, or right on the Beacon's website at thebuckscountybeacon.com. And look, everybody, if it's not clear already, well, wake up. We're going to need independent, community-supported, progressive media in the weeks, months, and years ahead. There could not be a better time to take a moment, head on over to thebuckscountybeacon.com and click on the Support the Beacon button. Support the Beacon button and become a supporter. Become a supporter for as little as $1 a month. Become a regular member at $5 a month or a yearly supporter for as little as $50 a year. You can even drop a one-time donation to help keep the Beacon's critical lens focused and sustainable. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of good reasons not to spend the money at some of these anti-DEI folks that are getting on the Trump train. You know what I'm saying? But when you're out there boycotting all those folks and you're sitting there like, hey, what am I going to do with this extra $50 sitting in my pocket that I didn't dump in Target this week? Why don't you head on over to the Beacon, click on buckscountybeacon.com, drop a one-time donation, right? Help keep this going strong, everybody. All right, let's see what's on the menu this week. Well, tragically, at least 67 people were killed in the devastating collision between a commercial airliner and a Black Hawk helicopter in D.C. I know you've seen it all over the news. That just happened on Wednesday. Now, before details about what actually happened could even be uncovered, of course, Trump took to the podium to blame DEI policies. Yep, that's right. And it looks like Elon Musk's tantrums over FAA regulations and fines against SpaceX may have actually had a role in the disaster. And this just in, literally half an hour before we're going to show today, Trump now blames the Black Hawk helicopter pilot for the disaster, at least according to his latest no evidence post on TruthSocial. Crazy. Now, David Lebrick, the highest ranking career official in the U.S. Treasury, is the latest to resign after conflict with new officials at the Elon Musk-led Department of Government Efficiency, which is not even really a department, right? It's a brand, right? Doge. Right? Pretty consistent with everything Musk does. Musk's people have been demanding access to sensitive payment systems that the government uses to dispense more than $6 trillion annually to households, businesses, and others, including Social Security, Medicare, federal staff paychecks, and grant recipients. Yeah, I want that 25-year-old that was an intern at Musk's SpaceX or his underground fantasy world, right, to be kind of having access to payroll systems. Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds really appropriate. Now, this is something to keep an eye on, right? Coming to a school near you, an Arizona State University student group that has connections with white supremacist organizations is planning an event on their campus to encourage students to report other students to ICE. Yep. The officially recognized student group, College Republicans United, wrote on X, "We will be tabling on campus asking fellow students to report their criminal classmates to ICE for deportation." And the post went on to share a tip form created by ICE. Yeah, that's right. Why don't you teach everybody to be an arc? There you go. Gotta love it. Insane. On Wednesday, Trump signed an executive order called, here it is, Ending Radical Indoctrination in K-12 Schooling, which escalates the school board wars that we're all too familiar with here in Bucks County. The order builds on the attacks on DEI programs and the LGBTQ community and reestablishes Trump's 1776 commission to reshape public school curriculum ahead of the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States. This is just, I can't even start. Let's take a look what's happened in the Beacon, right? Writing in the Bucks County Beacon, Pat LaMarche, who we had on the program last week, writes about the concerns of gun safety advocates after Trump, quote, shuttered the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. LaMarche talked to Adam Garber, executive director of Ceasefire PA, about how the gains made in the prevention of guns deaths are now at risk. Peter Green unpacks a new report from the Education Voters of PA, Our Taxes, Their Slush Funds, about the outrageous, frivolous spending by PA's largest cyber charter school. Already a scam, just in the name, but and that place is called the Commonwealth Charter Academy. Yep, you've seen the commercials. The Beacon's editor-in-chief, Cyril Michaleko, shined a light on Central Buck's clumsy and what many community members call inadequate guidance on handling ICE raids in their schools. And hot off the presses, really, literally, just today, Colin Kohlhaas reports for the Beacon on rallies in Harrisburg in support of 2 bills for a fair districting amendment to the state constitution. State Senator Tim Kearney and Steve Samuelson will introduce House Bill 31 and Senate Bill 31, which calls for an independent redistricting commission. And it's called 31 because that's when the next redistricting will take place, following the 2030 census. And we're going to get behind the scenes of the Beacon, but I'm not going to spoil it too much. I'm going to leave that up to Emily to do. But we're going to, once we kind of look at some of the headlines, once you get into it, we're going to find out what's happened at the Beacon and how the Beacon is preparing for this kind of daily onslaught that we are going to be facing in the days, weeks, months, and years ahead. Welcome to the show, Emily.
Hello, Kevin.
Well, I wish we could say that this is going to be, all happy and daisies and picnics and everything, but I don't think there's anybody who listens to this or you or anybody that expected anything but what we're seeing right now.
I mean, the speed with which it's going is a little alarming. I went on vacation. I left on January 19th and left the country.
How hard was it to come back? Just kidding.
The problem was I had internet there. So I was catching some of the news while I was on my cruise, and I was like, oh God. But it took a while to catch up once I got back.
Yeah.
So I've been back for 4 days, I think. And it's outrageous. I can't keep up with all of the craziness that's going on right now.
Yeah, I feel kind of 2 ways about this, and we talked about this before the show too. Is I guess there's some value in having gone through some of this before, right? In the sense of, not that it's any easier, not that it's better, it's not. But at least I find myself emotionally in a different place in terms of how to approach these things, to say that, okay, we know it's coming. And I think the other part of it is the reason for that is the plan was released a couple of years ago. Project 2025 has been available to read and review. And so, it was clear what was going to happen.
Yeah, it was clear. I didn't think it was going to happen this quickly. They're getting a lot in. If that's what Elon Musk's job is government efficiency. I don't think that this is him going this quickly. I think it's, Stephen Miller.
Yeah, totally.
That's really what's happening here, and Russ Vought and the whole thing. Yeah, it's crazy. And I think it's one of those, it's good we went through it. It's not good we went through it before.
No, but it's nothing good about it.
It's like we're going to talk about gun violence. It's like gun violence, right? We're desensitized now. That's what's happening, is we've been desensitized to the crazy stuff because it's already happened before, and we're able to compartmentalize some of it and go, oh, this is insane. But there's new levels. So you have to, really pick and choose where to spend your emotional and mental effort.
Yeah, I just think that the big difference for me is things like this. I think so much energy was spent on the kind of I can't believe this. I'm outraged. I can't believe what he's doing. I can't believe he's doing this. This is unprecedented. This is unprecedented, because it was. We had never seen anything like that in a presidency before. And that's the kind of stuff that I feel okay, no, this is digging in where can we be effective, in starting, and at least, some of the folks that I've been talking to, I know students at my university were coming at the last semester, starting to ask okay, let's start our organizations now, because we need to get in rooms with each other in order to kind of plan about how we're going to protect each other. That's the kind of thing that seemed fundamentally different to me. I don't want to say fundamentally, don't make too big of a thing, but that kind of awareness of like, look, we're going to have to fight, and there's not enough time to just like, these people are immune to shame. They're immune to kind of like, being like, I can't believe you can't, but this is not what America is. They don't care.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it was very obvious that people have been at least somewhat preparing when this, funding freeze almost happened on Monday. Was that Monday?
I think so. I mean, it seems like a month ago, right?
I know. But the amount of states that said they were going to sue the
Yes.
government, the amount of foundations and organizations and colleges that all spoke out, like that was, people understanding how serious it was and putting the effort in. And now it got, removed for now, except for what he's going to defund in other places.
Yeah, and like there's even like things like, technically what's been rescinded is the order about how to carry it out, but
Right.
the kind, the rule or whatever. I mean, the order is not even necessarily rescinded in that way. So it's like even a question about, they're just going to leave it there until they kind of say, okay, we're going to issue the next rule. Now we're going to do it in a different way, and it's just going to be the same thing. But
Right. Well, I mean, like the ending racial indoctrination in K through 12 schooling,
right.
right? Like that is one of these mechanisms to remove funding from public education
Yep.
in another executive order.
No, exactly. And what was interesting, I mean, not even interesting about this, but I remember, like you said, we're gonna get rid of the board, we're gonna get rid of the Department of Education, because that's been a long time what the conservatives have been saying. I
Mhm.
remember telling people, like, they're not going to get rid of the Department of Education until they use the Department of Education to do their work.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what they're doing. I mean, just what you said, right? I mean, that's the funding streams, and basically say, oh, you want your school to be able to function. Well,
Right.
you're going to have to do a few things, like remove like any kind of trans friendly bathrooms from your school, for example, right?
Right.
Stop training your teachers in how to kind of be sensitive to people from a variety of cultures.
Right.
Crap like that, right?
I know. I mean, it's laughable how crazy that executive order is.
Yeah.
It's laughable. I think it's worth noting that the executive order is literally going to try to use Title IX
Yeah.
to, I don't know, um, punish trans kids.
Yeah.
Like,
Right. It's going to use Title IX in like those two ways. Like one, I mean, all the just the random made up propaganda about kind
yeah,
of like trans like men posing as women going into assault girls in bathrooms, all
right.
that nonsense, which does
Yeah,
not happen.
right.
Like if anything, it's like the trans person who's in that bathroom is the one who is at risk. We all
Yes,
know that. But
yes,
they're going to use that to say that by upholding the rights of LGBTQ youth, you're actually infringing upon the rights of women and girls.
right.
I mean, it's like, holy crap.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Uh, it's shocking to me. I don't understand uh how they're gonna make it work. It's a lot.
I'll tell you, they're
Um,
not going to make it work. I am 100% like of committed of the mind at this moment. I'm open to change, right? But that they really don't care how it works. They're
no.
just looking for destruction.
Yes.
And they're going to and then school districts and everything are going to be left to try to piece things together. Right? They're the ones who have to worry about how do you make this work, because they're actually care about the kids in their
Right.
schools and the communities in which they're embedded. I mean,
Right.
that's really where we're at.
And
But
then as they dismantle the school system by using this and withholding funding from public schools, then they will pass, school choice
yes,
things across the country. And then kids will all go to private schools. And then it will further dismantle our public education system.
yep. and it'll be done with public funds.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And it will be, and so we're basically they're going to take our tax money and they're going to send it to religious oriented schools for the most part. That's really what it's been about. That's what Betsy DeVos has been about for 20 years.
And
Right?
the Bradley Foundation
Yep.
and the Heritage Foundation,
A whole slew of
and,
them.
you know, the Center
Yeah.
for Renewing America. Like, I mean, just they're all there.
Yeah, exactly. And if you
They're
look
all in
at
on this.
right, if you look at Kansas right now, Kansas, they just like a state senator in Kansas just introduced legislation to do exactly what you just said at a state level. Right,
Yeah.
we're going to basically privatize it all. We're going to take all public funding. We're going to put it all into big vouchers, right?
Yeah.
And we're called scholarships or grants or whatever like this. And
Yeah.
you know, there's the
Two
model.
good examples of where this has already happened.
Yep.
Arizona and Florida.
Yep.
Okay, so I lived in Arizona for a couple of years, in my 20s, and I taught art classes after school at various schools around the Phoenix Valley, and some of them were during school because they had a voucher program, and so it was all charter schools because the public schools were complete trash. And the charter schools didn't want to actually pay for art educators. So the program that I was in was an after school enrichment program where we taught kids how to draw like a drawing using straight lines and curved lines. I mean, this is the most basic like drawing class ever. It's supposed to be like paint night essentially for kids. And I loved teaching the classes, but then I found out I was actually the art curriculum for a couple of these schools. I was like, there is no way that this is what they're learning about art. Like, and to this day, like I own land in Arizona and I follow what's going on in the county that we have land in, and their public schools are complete trash. Like, and people are like, I can't send my kid to Black Mountain in Golden Valley. Shout out Golden Valley, Arizona, because the school system is so bad.
Yep.
So then they have to ship their kids to the next local school, or go to a charter school, or they're homeschooling their kids, and it just begets more and more dysfunction in the school system. And then, stupider people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where we're headed. I mean, that is the direction.
And Florida, I almost moved to Florida when my daughter was 5 and she was going to go into kindergarten. Because I have lots of relatives in Florida. And I looked at the school system there, and they're public schools, right? And you have a voucher, but then money's only being put into some of them.
Yeah.
So the regular one that you get in is awful. It's like completely awful. So then you have to get on a wait list for one of the magnet schools or charter schools. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And those schools are actually really good, but they're like specialized schools. Like my one nephew went to the School of Rock, in Florida. So that's cool. And now he does music for a living, which is cool. But it's not like a well-balanced, well-rounded, Renaissance education.
Right. Yeah. It does a great job for kind of preparing you for this one thing, not so much for being a kind of full-fledged citizen in a democracy. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or having a broad sense of kind of like the world and kind of history and all this other kinds of stuff, which is what is supposed to be the basis of K through 12. Right.
Right. A basic full breadth of information. Yeah. And I think that's the other thing we need to talk about on this ending racial indoctrination in K through 12 schooling is the part that's about patriotic education.
Yeah. This is the 1776 program, which we know well here in the Pembridge School District because, we had Hillsdale College coming in here on the heels of that curriculum, trying to impose that in Pembridge.
Right.
But yeah, this thing is insane.
It's insane. So like the idea is that they're going to create this, patriotic education is required or you don't get funding. Yep. Right. So you get rid of anything that says that any Americans by their race are oppressors, um, which means we can't talk about slavery anymore and that it
right?
existed. I'm pretty sure that's what it's saying,
Well, here it
which
is. This
is
is what you're
insane.
saying. They actually define it, right? This is how
Yeah.
it's defined in here. It says patriotic education, right, means presentation of the history of American grounded in an accurate, honest, and unifying, inspiring, and ennobling characterization of America's founding principles. Also, how the United States has admirably grown closer to its noble principles, and its commitment to America's aspirations is beneficial and justified, and a celebration of America's greatness and history is proper. So, what the unsaid there is exactly what Emily was just saying. So as you start talking about the really complicated history, for example, genocide of indigenous peoples, for example, as a founding principle, as slavery, right, as a founding principle of the kind of the building of American economy and wealth, then that's kind of not an ennobling characteristic of the founding of the Americas,
Right.
right? I mean, that sense of like you're going to have America is great, no questions asked, put your head down and do not be critical is like antithetical to like a democratic society.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I thought when I was reading it was Hitler Youth.
Totally.
That's where I went immediately, is, indoctrinating the young people so that they grow up under this auspice of patriotism, um, which is, it's ridiculous. I, it, the whole thing is so crazy,
Yeah.
and it's disturbing what they're trying to do. And the funny part about it is that it says to promote critical thinking. Like, that's in there. And I
Yep.
was like, how does this promote critical thinking? It's like a list of things you can't talk about, you know? And then the only things you're allowed to talk about. It's
Yeah.
rough.
Yeah, it is. And it's just, this is and this is really like a winding back. Like I can think about, I was talking with my students about this last semester. I was like, I remember the education that I was raised on, right? And I had some pretty good teachers. Wasn't in a great school district, but I had some pretty good teachers that really encouraged us to think critically and so on. But even that, like the vision of the past of the American story, I mean, I didn't really learn how to look at that history critically until like maybe the end of high school and once I got into college, when I started to say, oh, this is a much more complicated story.
Yeah.
And then it seems like in schools now, like K through 12 schools, there's been really kind of like progress on that, about opening up kind of the curriculum to understand the complicated and really interesting and rich history. And I mean that with the kind of warts and everything, right? That's how you
Yeah.
teach critical thing. And that is a version of what we could call patriotism, right? We
Right.
could call patriotism that thing of looking critically at where we are so that we can be better,
Right.
right? Instead, they decide patriotism as like, I won't do the Musk salute, but that's what they want.
Yeah.
Right?
It's city on a hill shit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's
Yeah.
a shining city that's perfect, and we don't have to look back at anything. I mean, I know in my local school district, I saw a post from a parent that there aren't enough kids signed up for Latin class. Now, I know 1776 curriculum actually likes Latin,
Yep.
like they like the classics.
They do.
But there's also a funding problem with foreign languages, and there's the whole America first. Why do we need foreign languages?
Hmm.
But one of the things I was thinking about with it is I watched Gladiator 2 the other night. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it yet. No.
Oh, it was really good. It was
Oh,
really
good.
good. I didn't think it was going to be as good as it was. But one of the crazy things about it is like the Republic, of ancient Rome. I learned about it in high school when I took 4 years of Latin. And I learned about how societies crumble
Hmm.
through corruption and greed and all of the things, and making the Senate not have any voice. And I think classes like that are so important to give the history, so that you see what happened before, so that you don't have to repeat it. But our local school might not have enough kids for Latin class. So they might not have a Latin class anymore,
Yeah. Yep.
you know, which
Because
is
America. Because
America.
America. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that stuff is absolutely, critical. We're reading Jason Stanley's kind of new book, Erasing History, how fascism erases history to kind of control the narrative kind of thing in one of my courses right now, for this reason, right? Because he does this, let's look at kind of like patterns of regimes, right? And how these things, the strategies which they've used historically, as ways of kind of maintaining control, because, identifying patterns, right?
Yeah.
And see that, and again, there's no one's going to say ancient Rome and the United States right now are identical. Like, nobody is saying that, but you can
But
look at
everyone can
patterns,
see the echoes
right?
of
Well, that's
history.
exactly. I mean, we don't use swords like we do, like in Rome. That is true. However,
We're not putting their
patterns of
heads on stakes on the wall,
exactly right yet.
yet.
So we'll see. But so, in terms of, like, let's talk about a different kind of pattern and the tragedy we just saw with this plane crash, is that, one of the things that, Silicon Valley folks, Musk in particular, we saw this from also Zuckerberg and all these folks, is they were the champions of the move fast, break things ways of kind of like approaching stuff. And
Yeah.
what you do is that you get any kind of regulations and any kind of staffing. And we know that Musk is the head of like Doge now, about getting rid of kind of wasteful government workers and things like this. Well, we just saw a situation in which those wasteful government workers, right? The people who are air traffic controllers, like, were really pressed thin, right? And again, we don't know exactly what happened here, but we know they were pressed thin. There was one person that was having to pay attention to both the planes and the helicopters, because there's so much helicopter traffic, where usually there's two, like all that kind of stuff. The vision of the future that these folks in government have, the Elon Musk and those folks, is to kind of make that the norm, where
Right.
everyone is stressed to the thing. When we see that the real consequences, and again, this might just be just a screw up. It might be like that. But the more that you put pressure upon it and you take away these kind of experienced folks and put in 25-year-olds, the more of this is we're going to see. Because it's just like, that was just devastating.
Yeah. Yeah. So I flew into DCA, Reagan Airport, on Sunday night, uh, on American Airlines. So when I saw this on Wednesday night, was it?
Wednesday night.
Wait,
Yeah.
what's today? Friday. Yeah. Wednesday night, I was like, oh my God, like that could have been me. Like
Yep.
that could have been me. And I'm never flying into Reagan again. I'm sorry. I decided once I read all of the stuff after this about how legislators have been lobbying to get more flights into and out of Reagan
Yeah.
for years now. And this was one of the added flights that they did not have the capacity for. Like the legislators wanted an easy, direct route to their home districts. So then they are like, hey, let's do this, even though there was always rules at Reagan about it's only for flights up to 1,000 miles away, I think, something like that. But so they've been adding extra flights, but the problem is the infrastructure is not there. There's not enough runways, like
Right.
it's a super congested air. There's 3 airports within 75 miles of there. You know what I mean? Like it is really congested, and that's not including the Pentagon and like the army bases that are there. So I'm done flying in and out of Reagan. I will continue to fly American Airlines. I am not worried about their safety record. The last time they had a plane crash was 2001.
Yeah.
That's 24 years ago.
Yeah.
The last time there was a major commercial airline crash in America was 2009. That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so there's all of these competing factors with it. And of course, Trump comes out and says, well, it was, DEI, because they're putting mentally handicapped people in air traffic control positions. I'm like, what are you even saying, dude? Like,
What he was essentially doing in that press conference is he was taking basically, you know, anybody who's ever had a job, right, knows that when you get hired, you'll get a thing, right, that says, you don't discriminate upon these bases, right?
Right.
I mean, that is part of like law. He's
Yes.
basically taking the law that you're not going to discriminate against people for disabilities or things like this, right?
Right.
And he's reading that
Protected
as if,
classes.
right,
Yeah.
and he's reading it as if like the FAA went out and sought people who were incapable of doing the job. Like that's the way he read that. I was like astounded. Like, you gotta be kidding me. And he's like, and you could see him. It was like the first time he read it, and like whoever like Stephen Miller wannabe wrote that crap. Like
Yeah.
he's like sitting there, let's like just reading it, looking at this paper, like
Yeah.
I really like to get back and just watch it on TV, kind of thing. But the damage that does is unbelievable.
My God, it's like, it makes me very concerned about the future.
Yeah, believe me, I'm right there with you.
Because if you can say that it's the fault of not discriminating against people,
Yeah,
that there's an airline crash, first of all, it's the most horrific, disgusting thing to do, to use politics at that moment. Like, none of those families deserve him saying that. None of them. It's ridiculous. But then it just makes me think of, like, when we talk about protected classes, it's like race, religion, national origin, blah, 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 right? Sexual orientation. I don't think that's actually a protected class yet.
protected in Pennsylvania. I mean, it's a
In
state,
Pennsylvania,
yeah,
but
it's
not
not federally.
federally.
Right? Yep.
But like, this is, as an also sometimes real estate agent, this is like, redlining.
Yes.
And it's right on the verge of that. Like, if it's okay for him to say this and say that's why it happened, so we need to go merit based, which means, in my opinion, it means he wants white men to do the job because they're the most qualified. That's what it sounds like to me. I'm not saying that that's what he said, but that is some context that I understood underneath what he was saying.
Oh, I totally think that's what it was. I mean, I mean, and I'll say that's what he was saying, right? Yes, it wasn't the exact words that came out of the guy's mouth, but I'll tell you, and the reason why I can say that is because this has been, I mean, as long as I've been on this planet, I've heard that argument as coded language to mean like black people. Black people are the problem. Women are the problem. Right. Yes, it became really uncomfortable to say, like, no, women are too emotional, so therefore they shouldn't be able to kind of like run a company, or that black people, we don't want to be around them because like they are kind of like, should be sent back to Africa and they're barely human. No, yes, that became the kind of thing that you couldn't say anymore when I was younger. They just changed the balance. And again, we know this. There's like, I forget what's that dude's name. It's a guy he was like this. He was like chief of staff or something like this, or he was one of the guy in the House. He basically came out and like said, "Well, look, we used to be able to say these things outright, but we've had to change our language over the years, but we still mean the same thing."
Right, and now they're saying we're getting rid of all of the woke policies, and so that means that now they're going to say all those things out loud again.
Right. And what it means is when they say woke, what they mean by this, what the unsaid, right? So we're getting rid of the woke policies. What they're saying is like, because woke policies put incompetent people, and they keep on repeating this, right? Incompetent people. Well, who are those incompetent people from woke policies? Those are black and brown and women and disabled people. That's who they're talking about. Right. And so they therefore say all those people are incompetent.
Right. If diversity, equity, and inclusion is about black and brown and women and LGBTQ, then that means when he says merit instead of DEI, he means screw all those people.
Right. And how many stories have we heard over the last several decades from these right-wing people that say like, look, here's this guy, this really good student, right? White student who was denied admissions to Harvard because that black student got in. These people have been saying this ad nauseum for decades. This is
Mhm.
not, this is the same playbook, except what the difference is they are now overtly exercising power to roll this back.
Yeah.
And it's in our face.
Yeah. It's
So,
awful.
yeah.
Yeah. Whew.
And so, like, yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. I'm just like, start rocking now. I'm like,
I know. My head's spitting on all these things. Yeah, it's the whole thing is crazy. Um and yeah, I don't know. Where do you want to go from here? 'Cause
no, well, here I just want one thing, and us we don't need to talk about this a lot, but one of the things I just wanted to say was that this is why I kind of wanted to mention that what happened at Arizona State University, or is happening at Arizona State University, with this student group wanting to go out to table in order to basically report on your fellow students and say call ICE on them, whether you know or not, whether they're undocumented,
right.
right? That's the whole idea,
Right.
is
They seem
report
like
on
they
them.
have an accent.
Right. These two things work in like connection, right?
Yeah.
The federal policy is about anti-woke policies, enabling the power from the top, and then enabling the brown shirts at the bottom, right? The
Yeah,
people that are going to carry it out.
it's like the stop and frisk policies that they used to have in
Exactly.
New York. It's that kind of thing.
The papers,
But
please law in Arizona, right? It's the
yeah,
same thing.
yeah, exactly. So it's not surprising that it's happening in Arizona. Don't get me wrong. I
Yeah.
am not surprised at all that this is
Nope.
happening in Arizona. Um, there are Democrats there, though. Just as a note. And you know what? Arizona and New Mexico used to be part of Mexico. I
Exactly.
think that's worth repeating.
Yep. Exactly.
I think it's worth
Exactly.
repeating. We took that land from the native people who lived there. And now we say you can't cross that river
Yep.
because it's ours.
Oh God, it's just laughter, crying at the same time.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what's happened at the Beacon, and I gave a quick overview some of the recent stuff this post. I mean, I think like Pat LaMarche, when she was on last week, was kind of previewed a little bit, gave us a little hint that this is the article she was working on about gun safety. It's a fantastic article,
Yeah.
like on what the implications could be, and it's like so awesome to have her aboard of the Beacon for sure to do this kind
I
of
love
work.
her.
Yeah, she's great.
Awesome.
So I was talking about that one, talked about the one from Peter Green. I mean, Peter Green's work has been just absolutely outstanding, going through what's happening with educating voters of PA.
So the Peter
Go ahead,
Green
sorry.
one.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Peter Green one holds a place close to my heart. I mean, I love all of Peter's writing about education and whatever. But so Cyril had me do the image for this article before I knew what the article was.
That's the way you want to do it. I guess that's the process, right? That's
Yeah. And I was like, ooh, what is this? Because I saw all these logos of all of these restaurants near my house, near Harrisburg. And I was like, And then I saw the CCA thing. And I will tell you that around the Harrisburg area, many people I know have left their school jobs, their public school jobs, and they've moved over to Commonwealth Charter Academy. My sister being one of them. My sister works for CCA. I have multiple friends. Like I have a friend who is a phys ed teacher. Now he's a phys ed teacher for CCA. What they do, I do not know. I don't know how you do phys ed over the internet, but I'm sure it can be done, and I'm sure he's doing a great job. But like it's like all the bars and restaurants around here are like on there, and I was like, I'm like, I do know my sister had she has like an annual thing where all the teachers get together and they have like a giant party and everything. And I'm like, I bet that costs a pretty penny. Like as I'm reading all of this stuff. So I found that very fascinating because it's a lot of it's I think it's headquartered around here. They have obviously satellite things other places,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, I know a couple students who graduated from Kutztown who worked in public schools and now are teaching are teaching there.
Yeah.
Right. And what's ironic is, again, this is the whole shock doctrine mentality, right? Is that you squeeze the public schools, that makes working in public schools more and more difficult because there's
Hmm.
fewer staff, more students, less programs, more pressure from like the state and the outside
Not fair
agencies.
funding.
Right, exactly. So you sit there, you put a pressure upon that, and the students who've like left their jobs, work for that now, and they're like, yeah, at least I'm left alone. I
Right.
mean, I've got the curriculum and things like this, but I mean, I couldn't take it anymore with with everything that was going on in the schools. I mean,
Right.
that's the model, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's just when they're given the option, I mean, like, most public school teachers have too many students to take care of,
Mhm.
right? They don't have any money for supplies, you know, like it's things like that. And then this rich Commonwealth Charter Academy comes and is like, oh, we'd love to hire you. Here's your pay. You work from home. We'll give you a computer. Um, and all of the kids that you're going to work with are getting sent a computer and all the supplies they need, and like that's tough.
Yeah, and out of
That's
the side of
tough
their
to
mouth,
teach them.
they're also like, and we'll do our best to kind of weed out people that aren't going to work out, so you won't
Right.
have to deal with those problem kids. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, but I mean, I also know, like, one of my friends, her son goes to Commonwealth Charter Academy, and he stops school at 1 o'clock in the afternoon
Hmm.
every day, and doesn't have school on Fridays.
Yep.
So, you
Well, I guess
know,
the good news is, though, I mean, this is a Peter Green's other article from a couple like last week or something. At least from what I understand, at least the AI cyber charter that you only had to go to school for 2 hours a week has been at least temporarily stopped, like at the
yeah,
state level. So,
yeah. Cyril and I were discussing the other day in our weekly meeting, um, interesting ways to fundraise for the Beacon, and we're like, well, we have lots of professors and smart people that write for us. What if we started a charter school? I was like, we could bankroll.
I'd rather teach it the Beacon than a lot of other places. I'll tell you that. Oh God. Oh God. It's like, what, I like, okay, this just like plugs into like, I've had this tendency my entire life, the kind of thing like, yeah, what the hell? If the world's going to shit, what the hell? Look at this, just do it. It's like, what the hell? Why not? It's like, enough of this trying to like defend institutions. Woo! We're going down.
Right.
It's like, and I'm not saying that's what you were suggesting, but it's just like, you know what I mean? It's like, if it's like, if this is where we're going, is like, okay, let's ride it.
Right. Yeah.
Ugh.
Well, and if that's where the money's going, right? Like,
Right.
I hate to say I'm a mercenary, but I've been a mercenary my entire career. Because I, came out of college at the burst of the dot-com bubble with a degree in
Mm,
graphic design.
yeah.
Not a good combination. Too many graphic designers, not enough jobs. So I've always been a mercenary. So I'm always looking for interesting ways to fund things. And that's why this is so funny. Like, we're not going to do it. Do not look for the Beacon Charter School yet.
Okay, I'm going to set up a web page, just everybody out there. So if there's any interest in it ahead of time. No, but I mean, this is the sad part about it, right? We've talked about this on the show before and things like, the origins of the charter schools was about kind of improving public education. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
reason why Albert Shanker from the AFT was like a supporter of this from the get-go, is the idea was to kind of, okay, let's take some of the kind of like quote unquote experimental ways of kind of like about learning so that we can kind of improve learning and then share it with everybody, right? That was the
Right.
goal. And
Right.
and I don't, I hate to paint with a broad brush, right? Because I know that there's there's not, well, cyber charter is different. I just, that I'll never get my head around. But the Beacon has got a webpage about this new thing. But
Oh, Amy's in on it now
right,
too.
right. No, exactly. But I mean, it's like there's some charter schools that do some really cool stuff, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and that are, they do quality education. So I don't want to paint with a quality the big brush. The problem is it's just the concept as a whole is where the issue is, right? Because if you can
Yeah.
pick and choose your students and it's depending upon like your parents being involved to us, they can get you to and from things and all this other kinds of stuff. and you don't have to worry about sending your kid to some place that has people that think differently than you do.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's really, and
Yeah.
so
I think it's like charter schools are cool in the idea that you could specialize education for certain things, which I think is cool. But then the you lose both the well-rounded education because you're spending so much time specializing, and then you spread the money super thin across all of what we already have.
right.
And that's the biggest problem of it, is that it dismantles the fabric of public education, because like we don't like we already have it sorted, populations with schools and how that matches, and then you throw in these extra schools and then the kids leave. And I remember during the pandemic, my daughter was in 5th grade when the pandemic started, and she stayed home, like pretty much everyone stayed home in 6th grade, like her 6th grade
Yep.
year.
Yep.
And
That's my
then
daughter too. Yeah.
some people kept staying home. But what I remember, there was a conversation when in the first school year, where it was like the second half of the year, everyone stayed home and it was like, okay. And then everyone had to decide whether to send their kid back to school or not, and whether to send them to a charter school that was set up for online learning, or whether to use the local school district's online learning portal. And we had a big conversation about it, because for every single kid that got sent to a charter school and away from our online learning school that we had for our school district, the school district lost $23,000.
Yeah.
Every single kid, right? So you lose four, you're at 100 grand. You know what 100 grand funds like in a school district?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Even the way they calculate, I mean, everything about the way that's, especially in Pennsylvania. I mean, this is different in some other states, but like in Pennsylvania, the way it's set up, like of course the charter schools get paid first, right,
yeah,
before the school district can do this, and they have a formula that basically says, okay, here, and look, if you're a charter school and you get that $23,000 per student, for example, right, I get that $20,000. There's no guarantee that $23,000 is going to be spent, right, on student learning, on kind of like supporting the education, right, especially
right,
if it's a private charter,
yeah,
right. You're basically handing people over, saying, okay, here, go use this $23,000 so you can make more
right,
money and pretend to educate my kid.
right. There's taxpayer dollars that are moving from a public institution to a private institution, and then hidden, and there's no more transparency, and there's no governing board. Like
Yep.
they may have a private governing board of their charter school, but they don't have an elected governing board of their school, right, that is bound by sunshine laws
Right.
to be clear about what they're teaching kids, where they're spending the money, all of those things. So
Yeah.
that's why the Beacon could continue on. If we had a charter school, we could continue on forever because we'd make so much money.
It's unreal. It's
Yeah.
unreal, right? We're gonna continue to bring you progressive media on the backs of our kids. I mean, it's like literally, it's like, I mean, it's this world. Well, before I want to get into a little bit what's happened down like behind the Beacon first, but I want to give a shout out to Colin Kohlhaas, the piece that was just reported out today, just published on the website today, looking at the rallies that took place in Harrisburg in support of these two bills on fair districting. One, I want to give a shout out, number one, because I think I love Colin's voice as being part of the Beacon. Yet another person that's coming in, another writer that's coming in that's doing some really cool coverage. I love having the coverage of these happenings at the state capitol. There's a real absence of that kind of reporting, I think, of just like people who are doing the work of pushing and supporting change, the stuff
Yes.
that's not the sexy big 500,000 people rallies, but nonetheless people that are there pushing. So it was like kudos to Colin, and it was great to see that his addition to the Beacon.
Yeah, I mean, Colin's great. This is, I think, the second article he's written for us. He's very smart. He has a PhD. He studied the labor movement in, early 20th century America and late 19th century America. Like
When it was
that's,
still legal to bomb labor unions, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So he has a really interesting perspective. Um, so I like having him here with us to write interesting articles. I thought his article was great. And, you know, let's go with fair districting. I love the idea of this, and come on, we've been trying to do this for a long time,
Yeah.
and it's a continual fight, obviously. But that's why I like so much what he said in there about how the panel would be people who had never been elected to anything.
Yeah.
Like
Mm-hmm.
I love that idea. We did when the beacon first came out, we did an article about the new maps, and there was now I can't remember it. There was this website you could go on and you could draw districts.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Do you remember that?
I cannot think of the name of it, but yeah, I played around with that quite a bit actually.
Yeah. So, this isn't a new idea to have it make sense to everyone. So the thing with electoral districts is that they're supposed to be contiguous, compact. What are the other things?
Contiguous, compact, and
Yeah.
I want to say similar is the wrong word, but isn't it like they have to be relatively equal, right, in distribution?
Yeah.
So it's like those three
Yeah.
things, and those are the parameters of that website too, right? So you had
Yeah.
those were the kind of the rules of it, which was cool.
Yeah. So like if regular people were like, let's see what makes sense for a district, and they weren't like I don't know, Scott Perry's district that I sit in, District 10, is they looped in Harrisburg
Yep. And they cut
and then
Harrisburg
put
in
it with
half, right?
all of York County.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Like it's like this little, so I'm in that little sliver, and then it goes out like this into York County, which is not cool. And then they took like the for the state house district. Our state house district is after the most recent redistricting. Our state house district is no longer contiguous. We literally have a river that runs through it. The mighty Susquehanna River runs through my district because Cumberland County on the edge started to become left leaning. And it was easy to just say, it's similar to Harrisburg City.
Mm-hmm.
So now, those of us in Cumberland County are having to deal with getting the resources in the same district as the city of Harrisburg. Now we have a Democratic representative because they were like, we'll give you this blue district and we're making all these red districts,
Yeah.
right? Because they didn't want us to affect those red districts.
Packing and cracking.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So I'm really glad that Colin wrote that article. I thought it turned out really great.
Yeah, ditto. I'm looking forward to more coming down the road from there too as well. And also a shout out to, I think, Cyril's piece too, I think was really, I saw that, reporting on what the Central Bucks School District put out in terms of its recommendations about the ICE raids. I really saw that article as kind of like, okay, we're going to open up this thread of reporting that we're going to need to be paying attention to.
Yeah. And we actually got a letter to the editor this morning that I'm hoping is going to get published pretty soon, explaining why ICE can't raid schools because it's completely illegal. Surprise. um,
Yeah, I was happy to see actually. I wanted to put I just saw this. The Penridge School superintendent of the Penridge schools just sent out a memo to parents in the community and everything like this. And it was, I thought, pretty decent. Right? It was basically saying we protect all our students. We have procedures in place so that if someone were to show up, they are not allowed in the schools, basically, that the superintendent will be immediately notified, and they will not be able to like enter the schools until the lawyer gets there to make sure that they have a warrant. And like, just, I mean, at the very least, that's something, right? Where you could say,
right,
okay, now we have a sense that people are on the case
right,
even before this happens. So that's a welcome change to where we were with the previous superintendent. So
right. Yes. Um, Probably still paying for that previous superintendent though.
yeah, and their lawyers, but what is
Yeah.
that? Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Speaking of Penridge though,
yeah,
the ending racial indoctrination in K through 12 schooling in the 1776, that thing.
yeah.
How much do you want to bet Jordan Adams? While they said that this 1776 commission is going to be unpaid, it does say that it will pay for travel expenses and per diems. How much do
Jordan
you want
Adams.
to bet?
Oh
Jordan
man,
Adams is there. He's
I'm,
like,
I, yep,
I need $500 a day
yep.
plus expenses.
I am sure. I am sure. If Jordan Adams is not on that commission, I am going to be surprised. I mean, like I'm like literally looking for places where I could put money down to make some money on this, because it's like, seriously.
Right.
I mean, that's really what I mean. Like, these are the way these people work, right? These are all auditions for kind of like,
Yeah.
jobs and things like this, right? They're
Yeah.
you have unexperienced, like lack of experience. You're going out, you put up a big web page, you pretend to be like an expert on stuff. You go out and then you get a win, or you get some sort of like media coverage so that you can get this other job,
Yeah.
right? It's like, it's just all freaking shams, smoke and mirrors nonsense.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
things that are not smoke and mirrors nonsense, however, are things like what's going on at the beacon. So we're going to pull that kind of screen back a little bit. So Emily, one, I know that you wanted to talk about a recent hire, but like give us a sense of kind of things. Here we are, 2025. We see all
Yeah.
this kind of stuff going on. What's that look like from, you put the hat on of kind of, here, I'm the owner of the beacon here. Put that hat
Yeah.
on, and like, how are you coming at this, and what's happening kind of behind the scenes?
So, behind the scenes, I've been very busy not writing any articles or editing any articles or anything like that. I've been very busy working on our business plan and pitch deck for big investors. We are going to try to do a big funding round with lots of people who have money that they want to put into independent journalism. Um, the plan involves an expansion plan to many, many counties.
Mhm.
I already have all of the domain names for, I think it's 10 counties. Um, and we can only do it so fast. You don't want to spread
Right.
too fast and break. But we plan to use everything that we've learned at the Bucks County Beacon to create the Cumberland County Beacon, hopefully this year. I keep saying it's coming, but I need to go get some money. So we're in that process right now. I had hoped for the primaries, but I kind of feel like it might be for the general. But we will see. I've been interviewing people and talking to people in Cumberland County um, to try to build our team and get a stable of writers. Um, and then we're building. I'm redesigning the Bucks County Beacon right now in the background. No one knows.
Well, we all
And
know now. I
yeah, now everyone knows. You, me, Amy.
mean,
Um, yes. So I'm redesigning the beacon to make it a little more streamlined. We're going to add a couple sections to it that will then carry through to all of the other counties as we build out the other counties. One is going to be called a legislator watch.
Mhm.
So that'll be like our fits tracker that we have, except instead of it just being a running like how do you vote, it's going to be, hopefully a weekly, like these are the votes that took place. Here's how he voted and why. Essentially, like what Kirsten does now.
Mm-hmm.
but like short form, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So it'll live in its own place to track your local legislator. And then the other thing we're going to do is an extremism and PA watch. So we already cover a lot of extremists,
Yeah.
um, but we are going to try to make that more of its own bucket, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Give it a home to live in, to,
Yep.
you know, as part of like, just the visual everything. And we're going to clean it up. I'm going to make new article templates for our, we do a lot of photo essays. I'm going to make that
That's
nice.
cool.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed those. That's a really cool addition to like the reporting, the stories that are.
Yeah. So I'm going to make it so that they pop.
Yeah.
Um, so all of those things are going on, and then we're going to have a parent website. Um, I was trying to actually put a page up there since I'm going to say it, but there's literally it's just a broken link right now. um, we're going to have a parent site that is going to house the state, national, and extremism reporting, as well as the top stories from the different counties.
Oh, that's awesome.
Um, and that is going to be available sometime in the future at beacon.news.
That is awesome. Let me just. You answered some questions that I was going to have for you, like, but and I really like this model and the way that you've done just talking about it too. Is like, look, you don't want to grow too soon, so it breaks, right? But it's also the opposite of the way that some, say, progressive or independent media operations looked at how you build independent media. Like, there's been multiple attempts over the years. I've seen them come and go, where you have organizations based in DC, right, decide they're going to kind of fly in and we're going to set this thing up and kind of build this thing up, right? But you don't have the resources built out on the ground, right? There's not,
Right.
it's not that working out. So you don't know people, don't have local people, you just have, random folks coming in to write content. Where you talk about starting with the Beacon, that this, you've had an opportunity to really build this from the ground up
Yeah.
and build it in a way that say, okay, yeah, because you know this better than anybody, right? When you have a startup, when you're kind of starting something up, there's things that you can't anticipate, that you run into, to come up with the problems. Well, how do we work through this? And you start to develop processes for which to do this. And then to say, okay, now that we've had this opportunity, now we can start duplicating this, right? And
Yeah.
then building that out. I mean, I think that's sustainable in my mind, right?
Yeah.
As a process.
I mean, that's what I hope. There's economies of scale
Yeah.
in spreading to more counties that will help us grow our readership, our contributor base, our advertising base, all of those things. But the key to it is that it's kind of like the way newspapers used to work.
Yeah.
Like before they hollowed them all out. So there's going to be like local desks. Like it's pretty basic,
Yep.
but it's just something that has been missing, and I hope that we can fill the void. There was a report that came out in the last month about the state of local news, and you can look up. I would love to share this link. And I don't have it offhand right now, but you can look up an individual state, and then you can look in each county, and you can see how many newsrooms there are and what kind.
Yep.
And there, that informed some of my decisions. Um, I found a county that doesn't have its own newspaper at all, and so
Is
it's
this
on my
the
list.
State of Local News Project? Is that it by any
Yeah,
chance?
yeah. I think that's it.
It comes out of Northwestern. Does that sound right?
Yeah, the Medill School of Journalism, maybe. Yeah, I
I
think
just
something like that.
put that in the chat because I just grabbed the link for him. I just found it.
Yeah,
I don't know if the social. Yeah, there it is. Big, massive link up there. But
yeah. It's really interesting, and you can see where the news deserts are. So there has been a lot of funding in recent years to um, identify where we don't have local news so that it can be funded. But I'm using it to figure out where there's pieces missing.
Yeah.
Um, but most of the stuff we're looking at is counties that are near major metros that aren't the major metro, they're a suburban county. Because you find that the major metro has a bunch of papers, but they're not really covering the county. And if they are, they're covering high school sports, and if it bleeds, it leads, which is not what we do.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah. Okay, so my other update, you did mention Colin started writing for us. We also have another new writer who started covering the county commissioners. That's Melinda Rizzo.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, she just started 2 weeks ago, maybe. So she's already put out 3 articles, all based on the most recent county commissioner meeting. Check them out.
Any relation to Emily Rizzo, who used to
I
cover
don't
that stuff?
know. I
No.
don't think so.
Interesting. I was like, another Rizzo? Okay, good.
I know.
I was just thinking about it when you were saying that, because I think, it was interesting to see, like, she was like one of the few people that I saw covering county stuff, right?
Hmm.
She was showing up. She was coming
Yeah.
in there and talking to people and things like this. But anyways, that's a whole thing. But it was rare. It was rare, was
Yeah.
my point. Yeah.
Yeah. And now Emily Rizzo's writing in Kensington, I'm pretty sure.
Is that where she's at? Yeah, I've
Yeah.
been checking
I
her
think
out a bit.
she's maybe writing for, don't quote me, Kensington Voice. I'm not sure though. But I definitely think I read something about that.
But
Yes.
Melinda's her name? Melinda
Yeah.
Rizzo? Is it
Melinda.
Melinda
Yeah.
Rizzo? Great. Welcome, Melinda.
Yeah. So she's new. We're always looking for new writers. We don't have enough. Um, the whole left by Jenny Stevens is palpable,
Yeah.
and we are constantly trying to fill that. So if anyone else is looking to write for the Beacon, we probably have an opportunity for you. Regardless of whether you're in Bucks County or Cumberland County. And then the big new hire I made recently, she started a week ago while I was on vacation. Her name is Allie Holland. Allie we haven't decided what her title is yet. So don't quote me. When it goes on the website, you'll all know what her title is. But she is working on creating our advertising sales program. And is going to go sell ads for our website. So like the way that websites used to work, news used to work is you sold ads and that's what paid for the paper. And we have been fortunate enough to not necessarily need that in the beginning while we built our audience, but we now have an audience of, over 25,000 unique users a month. So we now are in the position to go sell some ads. So Allie's working on that. We just interviewed some different CRM companies yesterday. So we have chosen customer relationship management product that we are about to implement in the next couple weeks, and look forward to ads from hopefully lots of progressive companies. So welcome Allie. She's got an MBA. She used to sell big pharma, actually. And she's so thankful to be on the correct side of things now.
Yeah.
So she's very excited and is hitting the ground running. So we'll see.
Well, I'm gonna I'll when I get a chance to kind of shoot something out to Allie and say, hey, don't So Fresh, So Green Cafe in Percy is like the place to go. Is they I mean, run by the same people who run the Ridge Network. Right, run by the same person Adrian King, who was just inducted as the head of the Bucks County NAACP. They are awesome people. They have been like the fight, and they are building, like, they do fresh juice stuff there, but they got coffee, they got pastries and all this kind of stuff. They're doing amazing work. It's become a bastion of the community. I'm going to talk to them, let them know that they can advertise in the Beacon, because it's really, I think that is so, like, such a cool thing, because there's so much good stuff that's going on here, like Blooming Glen Farm. I think down the road, like, I think about just in like my immediate area, people that are just doing amazing work, that have been showing up to school boards, right, bringing kind of sustainable agriculture to our community. Like, to have places where these folks can kind of like advertise and support the very thing that is going to help their businesses thrive, and also connect all of us to places where we could put our money, right? That is going to help build that infrastructure. I mean, this is kind of like the mutual aid society version of this that we're going to need now going forward, right, for the long haul. But I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, I hope to create some kind of, community guide to restaurants, different shops, all that kind of stuff, where people can have listings there, and people know it's a good place to spend your money. That's my hope.
Yeah, and and here's another plug for people, that anybody who's like looking for want to find a place to write, but you're like, well, I don't know if I got to write about kind of state policy and stuff. Well, I'll tell you, I remember I had a student once she doesn't live around here anymore, but she was vegan, right? And so she went out as part of a project she did for my class, is that she went out and she did like reviews of all the kind of places that she could find that did vegan and vegetarian food in the area, right? Imagine if you're a progressive foodie out there who would love the opportunity to support progressive folks in the community, right? And to cover those kind of cultural aspects of our community that are as integral of building this kind of like, progressive institutions that, come on, I'm sure that the Beacon would love to have that kind of, so, get on board.
Yeah. I mean,
Emily's like, what are you talking about? You're just creating a job position that I didn't plan for.
Hey, I mean, there are a million possibilities, and I'm willing to hear all of them, and let's all grow together.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. Well, welcome, Allie. Great to have you aboard too as well. And so, Emily, anything else you got for the good of the order? Want to send folks away with this weekend?
No, I'm good. Yeah.
No.
Happy February.
Happy February. And let's hope that the kind of organization that we started seeing around school boards and kind of locally in Bucks County, that only builds, and that we're really taking care of each other and building those sustainable organizations, whether it's running for local offices, whether it's going out and talking to your neighbors, it's supporting those institutions in your community that are going to be what we need in order to really survive in any positive way the next several years. So, and as always, Emily, it's just like the work that you've been doing and kind of been able to do with the Beacon has been really like, a pillar of this project. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you like it.
Oh yeah. Like is a tame word for like overly enthusiastic in some systems. But it's true. So listen, if you get a chance, everybody, like I said at the top of the show, head on over to the buckscountybeacon.com, and like, especially for folks, you have an opportunity to, you're say boycotting Target, you're boycotting some of these other stores and things like this. The money that you're saving for those kind of giant kind of global corporations, well, why not sink it back into some place like the Beacon? Go to buckscountybeacon.com, become a supporting member for as little as $1 a month, a regular member at $5 a month, become a yearly supporter for as little as $50 like a year. Help make this sustainable, right? And the more, let's be clear about this, the more that we have as individual contributions, supporter of this stuff, the more that is going to buffet the Beacon through the highs and lows of kind of any kind of economy. Like if if anybody listens to the Majority Report, that's one of my favorite podcasts, go-to podcasts. And one of the things that, even when they say things on there that are unpopular and you have start people pulling some other ads because they're worried about it, The membership is what keeps it running and keeps it going through. And that's what we can do. That can be our part. So head on over to buckscountybeacon.com and become a supporting member today. Emily, I wish you all the best for the weekend. I hope you get some downtime. At least I can imagine you're incredibly busy at the same time. But we look forward to all the work ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin.
All right, everybody. This is Kevin Mahoney for the Bucks County Beacon's Friday News Lunch. And this is Emily Smith. We are out of here, everybody. Remember, take care of each other, right? Drink lots of water, as they say. Take your vitamins, eat good food, and get ready for the fight. All right, everybody. We're out of here.